Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the Fantasy Fellow Show. I'm your host, theFellowKGB. You can follow me on Twitter at theFellowKGB. And today we're rolling along here in the NFC West. We're wrapping up. This is our last division, so I'm super excited to wrap up this little segment I've been doing here. It's June 27th, about 5 o'clock in the evening. And we're moving on here. We just covered the Cardinals. If you haven't checked that out, you can check that one out after this. And we're going to be looking at the Los Angeles Rams here. So we're on a screen share here at thefantasyfellowship.com. My teams tab here, I just scrolled down and I took the Los Angeles Rams. And we're starting off here with head coach Sean McVay, offensive coordinator Kevin O'Connell, and defensive coordinator Brandon Staley. If we look here at what the Rams have been doing the last few years, we see Sean McVay, I think it's his fourth year here. He's been the offensive coordinator for a while, and I think this is the first year where he's allowed someone else to be given that title. So Kevin O'Connell will be the guy here. Let me just enter that in here. K-O Rosie O'Donnell. Okay, I'll spell that right later. So anyways, Sean McVay, last year the Rams really struggled. Their offensive line was not very good. Jared Goff was inconsistent at best. And this team really suffered, from poor defensive play, offensive line play, injured Todd Gurley. Everything was just kind of suppressed there. But they did end up winning 9 games, going 9-7. So it's a good team. We should expect a little bit of a better offensive performance this year. Brandon Cooks is gone, so we'll see how they decide to replace him, as well as Todd Gurley is gone. So they did draft a rookie who we'll get to in a bit. But let's start with the quarterback room. Jared Goff. Backups are John Walford, Bryce Perkins, and Josh Love. It's all about Jared Goff here. If anything happens to Goff, this team's in trouble. And they'll have to sign Cam Newton. So that's how that's going to go. But anyways, looking at what Jared Goff did last year from a fantasy perspective, if we filter here and we look at 4-point passing touchdowns, Jared Goff was quarterback 13. So he was, just on the fringe of being a trustworthy guy every week. He did average 15.5 fantasy points per game. He threw for 4,638 yards. And the problem was the 22 touchdowns to 16 interceptions. So he was among one of the league's worst at interceptions. He did offer 2 touchdowns rushing, but he's not going to get us any yards on the ground. He only had 40 all last year on 33 rushing attempts. So Jared Goff, everything's with his passing attack. If we look at his balance here from a week-to-week perspective, his highs are pretty nice. He can get in the 20s pretty easily. But he had a meltdown, in the middle of, I think, December or October, end of October, early November, where he just hit a couple of really tough defenses at Pittsburgh, Chicago, and Baltimore, and they just got buzzsawed. So a 3.7, a 5.2, and a 4.4. We can't have that from our starting quarterback. And then he did have a 1.1 against San Francisco. So 4 absolute disaster games. If we look at what he did the years before, he didn't really have any of those. He had one against Chicago. So he's prone to some really low lows, but his highs are pretty nice. He offers 2 to 3 touchdowns for the most part every week. So I like Jared Goff, but I don't think we can trust him as a quarterback 1 this year. He looks great as your QB2 in Superflex. I think that's a fine move. But if you're banking on Jared Goff, in a standard 1 QB league, I think I'd rather look somewhere else. A guy like Ryan Tannehill might be a better bet at that kind of standard league. So I like Jared Goff. He's, thrown around 4,600 yards the last 2 years, but he did drop off massively in touchdowns last year. That should tick up a little bit. I think I have him thrown about 28 touchdowns this year. And then he's really got to manage those interceptions. So, if you look at his fantasy points per game here, 17 points per game in 2017, and then a spike up to 19, and then down to 15.5. I would expect him to be somewhere in the 17 points per game range, where he's gonna be, a top 15 quarterback, most likely on volume, and we'll see if he can kind of correct some of the things that went wrong last year. But I guess with Goff, we're going to skip the running back, so we're going to go right to the receiver positions. Brandon Cooks is no longer with the team, so we're looking at Cooper Kupp and Robert Woods being the head honchos. Holding down the fort, guys behind them are Josh Reynolds. I think he's the 3rd or 4th year player. Van Jefferson, a rookie that they drafted. Greg Dortch is here. Nasimba Webster, Ernest Edwards, and a couple other guys just trying to make the team. But, outside of Cooper Kupp and Woods, who are both, wide receiver 1 threats, Josh Reynolds is an interesting guy to keep an eye on. Van Jefferson, the rookie, they took in the 2nd round, 57th overall. And I guess that's a pretty high draft pick for a receiver. So he might be the potential heir replacement for Cooper Kupp when I think he's going to be leaving in free agency. I don't know if they have the money to pay Cooper Kupp. So Van Jefferson's a really good, interesting guy in dynasty leagues. But as far as redraft this year, it's all about Cooper Kupp and Robert Woods. So let's just look at what those two did last year. And this is with Brandon Cooks, being on the team. But we see Cooper Kupp led the team in receptions with 94, 134 targets, 1,161 yards, and 10 touchdowns. So Cooper Kupp is the main, target near the goal line, red zone option. So that's super intriguing. He's probably going to lead the team in touchdowns again this year, I would bet. And then if you look at what Robert Woods did, Robert Woods gets a little bit more, carries on the ground. He's one of the best, rushing receivers in the league. He had 17 carries, 115 yards, and a touchdown. And then he did catch 90 passes. He led the team in targets with 139, and then 1,134 yards, and only 2 reception touchdowns, which is weird. So I have a feeling Robert Woods is going to be able to score more than 3 touchdowns this year. If we look at where these guys finished in PPR leagues last year, this will give us a good look at where they might be finishing this year. Keep in mind, Brandon Cooks is gone, and you got Cooper Kupp finishing as the wide receiver 4, and Robert Woods is the wide receiver 14. I would expect Cooper Kupp's numbers to drop down a little bit. I think 10 touchdowns is tough to repeat. And, towards the end of last year, they really started to phase, 2 tight end sets into the offense. But Cooper Kupp finished really strong. He had some really bad games here. And these were all the games that Jared Goff struggled in, if you remember. So these games all the games that Goff struggled, that's where we see the dips here for Cooper Kupp. But otherwise, Cooper Kupp was fantastic last year. So I don't know if he's going to finish as, high as wide receiver 4, but that's his ceiling. He's going to be a fringe wide receiver 1, I think, this year. And then if we look at what Robert Woods did, he was actually able to manage some good games against, if you look at these are the games that Goff really struggled in at Pittsburgh. And we see 7 receptions for 95 yards. And then the other one was here at Baltimore for 6 receptions, 97 yards. So I think Robert Woods has a little bit safer floor than Cooper Kupp than many people think. And when Robert Woods blows up, 13 receptions, 172 yards here. Robert Woods, 4 of his last 5 games were above 20 points. So I like Robert Woods in a best ball league. And even a redraft league, I think Robert Woods, last year was a career year for him in terms of targets, receptions, and I guess rushing. And 2018, he was better in yards everywhere and touchdowns too. So it's probably going to be a somewhere in between his 2018 and 2019 season. So I'm a big fan of Woods and Kupp. So go ahead and target both those guys at their ADP. I think they're both like fringe 3rd, 4th round picks, but I like both of them. With Cooks gone, it's going to be a lot of targets to these guys. So both of them could be in line for career years. And then we'll see who emerges here. I'm watching the Josh Reynolds, and I'm watching to see Van Jefferson in training camp. So, but those guys aren't on our radar. With Brandon Cooks leaving, though, it's going to open the door for the tight end room. And we got Tyler Higbee and Gerald Everett, guys that are, backups are going to be the rookie Bryson Hopkins, Johnny Munt, and just a couple guys here trying to make the team. But Brandon Cooks is gone. I think we're going to see a lot more 2 tight end sets here with Higbee and Gerald Everett on the field with Kupp and Woods and then the running back. Down the stretch, Gerald Everett did get hurt, and that opened the door for Tyler Higbee to get like his first extended run as a tight end 1. And Higbee just took off and ran with it. If we filter here by PPR, Tyler Higbee was putting up massive numbers. Right here, week 13 to 17, 4 100-yard games and an 84-yard game, no less than 7 receptions. He dominated the targets, only 2 touchdowns. But, if you can get this production out of your tight end, holy crap, we're looking at a tight end 1 here, maybe a top 1 or 2 tight end of the group. So a lot of people are nervous that this, it cannot be duplicated. And I don't think it can be at this level. But, he can go off for 100 yards almost any game right now. Going forward, I think. And if you look at what Gerald Everett was doing before he got hurt, Everett did get hurt week 13. So the first 12 weeks, we see Gerald Everett with 1, 2, 3, 4 really nice big games here. And he himself had a 136-yard game, only 2 touchdowns. But both these guys are really, really good tight ends. And Jared Goff's going to take advantage of these guys. You see the 3 games here of 10-plus targets. a game with 7 receptions, 8 receptions, 5 receptions. Both these guys are fantastic options at the receiving position. So I'm taking a little bit off Higbee's numbers, and I'm actually boosting Gerald Everett's a little bit more than I think most people are. But I like both guys. Higbee's going to be the number one starter that people are going to be looking for. But if anything happens to Higbee, man, Gerald Everett's going to be a smash. So if anything happens, I guess either of these guys, you're going to want to pivot to the other one and bank on those guys being a top 5 tight end. But these guys could be, trading off big weeks as defenses focus on Higbee one week or Everett the next week. So it's going to be interesting to see how the Rams, kind of reinvent their offense with these 2 really good receiving tight ends, Cooper Kupp and Woods. So yeah, I'm excited about that. If we look at what I finished my projections, I think I had Higbee a lot higher at first, and then I knocked him a little bit, but I have him here at tight end 8. And I think I'm going to move him up a little bit by like maybe 3 or 4 points to get ahead of Blake Jarwin here. So I see Higbee as, a top 7 tight end, a top 5 tight end, at best. And I think that's going to be interesting. And then I'm looking down here. Gerald Everett I have down here as the 25th overall tight end. I have him getting 460 yards, 3 touchdowns, and 41 receptions. So I don't think that's too crazy. And then I did end up with Higbee getting 67 catches, 715 yards, and 5 touchdowns. So I like both guys, and I think it's going to be a fun offense to watch how they spread the ball. But let's get to the running back room. I think that's the most interesting position on the Rams this year without Todd Gurley. They drafted Cam Akers out of Florida State with the 52nd pick overall. They had 2 second-round picks you see here in the 50s. So Cam Akers out of Florida State, Malcolm Brown's back, Darrell Henderson, former second-round pick from last year, John Kelly's still around, and then some guys just trying to make the team. But if you remember from last year, Malcolm Brown was kind of the red zone touchdown vulture, and then Darrell Henderson really didn't get any run at all. So I'm not really sure we're high on Darrell Henderson anymore. And I think this is going to be Cam Akers' backfield. Now, he's played behind some pretty bad offensive lines at Florida State, and he's not really stepping into like an elite offensive line. It's not even an average offensive line for the Rams. But, I mean, just thinking about what he did with Florida State, Cam Akers can come in and be a pretty successful back. He's not going to put up Todd Gurley numbers, but there could be rushing touchdowns and there could be passes up for grabs. And we know they like to throw the ball to the running backs. And I don't think Malcolm Brown's catching passes. I don't know if they even trust Darrell Henderson to do that. So Cam Akers has a lot of opportunity that if he comes in and looks the part right away, he could end up surprising a lot of people. So I've been moving him steadily up my boards, an inch or two every time I come in to open him up. But I have him being the bell cow back this year. I don't even know if I like the word bell cow because it's really hard to predict what they're going to do. But I ended up giving Cam Akers 185 rushing attempts, 30 receptions on 44 targets. I got him scoring 8 touchdowns. And I gave Darrell Henderson and Malcolm Brown a combined 160 carries. And I don't even know if I feel good about that. I might lower some of these guys' numbers and end up giving them more to Cam Akers. So at the moment right now, I'm admitting that I'm low on Cam Akers, and he still came out in my running back scores, running back 26. So I think the next time I go in and I edit these, he's going to probably shoot up into he's going to probably be in the 19 to 20 range for running backs. I'm probably going to add up quite a bit of points to him. So I like Cam Akers. I like the Rams offense for fantasy is going to be one of those teams that we're going to have to make sure you pick a guy, because I think it's pretty easy to see how they're going to move the ball. Jared Goff's going to throw to Cooper Kupp and Robert Woods. He's going to hit Higbee, and then they're going to run the ball and throw the ball to whatever running back's on the field. So I think that's going to be Cam Akers. So those are the staples of the offense. And let's just take a quick look at the rest of the draft class. They did have a lot of guys here. So they started with running back, receiver, and then we see them dive into defense here with the edge rusher from Alabama, Terrell Lewis, another safety here out of Utah, Terrell Burgess, another safety, Jordan Fuller out of Ohio State, a linebacker, a kicker, and a guard. So a pretty well-balanced draft here. I think they addressed pretty much every position that they wanted to. And I guess the guy to keep an eye on for me in Dynasty would be Bryson Hopkins out of Purdue. If they can't re-sign Gerald Everett or Tyler Higbee, he's going to be a guy that steps into a bigger role in a year or two. So keep an eye on Bryson Hopkins, tight end out of Purdue. And then off-season additions, we see edge rusher Leonard Floyd from Chicago, Austin Blythe, defensive tackle Alshon Robinson. And then they re-sign some of their guys. So The Rams, 9-7 last year. I like what they did this offseason, and it's going to be kind of fun to see how Sean McVay decides to make this offense something a little bit different than what we've been used to. So that's the big challenge with the Rams, is transforming the identity, and we'll see if they can pull it off. So that's going to do it, though, for the Los Angeles Rams. If you're watching on YouTube, please leave a comment, like the video, subscribe to the channel. And if you're listening on any of the podcasting platforms, I highly recommend checking us out on YouTube. But if not, leave us a rating, a review. Any of that would be greatly appreciated. And yeah, thanks for your time. And we'll see you in another video. Peace.